24. We are broadcast live on Spectrum Cable TV channel 1303. We're web streamed on the town YouTube channel, and you can also join us remotely via Zoom. If you'd like to join our meeting via Zoom, please raise your hand, and our town manager, Audra, will bring it to our attention and allow you to speak or make comment at our meeting. The first item on tonight's agenda is the public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anybody here from the public who would like to make a comment on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, we move on to item number 2, which is the approval of board minutes for June 4th and June 18th.
So I'll start with June 4th then. I'll make a motion to approve the June 4th minutes.
Second for discussion.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion?
I guess just some of the way that the proposal details, for instance, I think it's just maybe that we're trying to include too much in the minutes, but each person Jeff Jordan supports for safety and environmental benefits.
Yeah, you don't like
Supports
those.
for business growth. What is that? There's a disagreement between the subject and the verb, for instance, like you need I don't know.
Oh, I see. It should be support.
Like Will
It should be
Allison
support
McKellar
instead.
supports for, does that mean Allison expressed support for increased public access or?
Audra, on the minutes, I think it's a good point. We're using AI to do these now. We might have to scrub these a little bit more. It's there's a human element that's a little bit lost there.
I think there might not have been enough human intervention in this one.
Okay.
My name is spelled wrong.
Yes.
I don't,
Yeah.
it's not a big deal, but I think it's a lot to try to capture what everybody said.
In the proposal details section, like row
Yeah,
110
and I
to
don't think it's
136.
correct, and it grammatically doesn't read well. It's not a hill I'm gonna die on, but I didn't come prepared with specific edits for that, but do we always need to, we go back and forth between whether we just say, these people spoke, or the board took public comments, or we summarize what everybody said. For a while, our minutes had gotten very sort of skeletal on purpose, I think. And now that we're having AI do it, it's.
Yeah, I mean, from a personal standpoint, I know that on my line, which is 132, I don't think I suggested an alternative float layout. I asked. There was more of a question than a suggestion. Had they considered, and then they gave an adequate explanation, which gives some context to the question that I asked. So there is definitely something missing here with these.
I like having a little bit of the detail to further context, but yes, you're right. It should be accurate, and if they're using the word in plural like supports or concerns, maybe they left out the word expressed, something like that, because of its trying to do it in a brief way. But we want it accurate. I do think it's nice to, more than just Jeff Jordan spoke or Josh Moore spoke, but to say what they spoke about as briefly as it does is nice, as long as it's accurate.
Yeah, deciding what to summarize from certain people's commentary, specifically mine, I would think would be very hard sometimes when I can't say it succinctly. I don't know. This just seems like way too much or different than what's normally happened.
So I guess for the proposal, it's the Lyman Morse float proposal details, public comments section,
Public and board comments.
public and board comments. Do you want to just write down who spoke, or do you want us to take a crack at summarizing what they said? What's the preference?
Because we have these on YouTube now,
Right.
I think I would prefer just if you said, listed who made comment, and then if people
not a
want more
summary.
context, they could
Okay.
do more. So there's nothing left to interpretation.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, proponent, is that even the right word? Is it applicant?
I think under the statute, all that needs to happen, this is Jeremy speaking, I'm sorry. Under the statute on minutes, all that needs to happen is just your action taken. And then you could reference the YouTube videos for clarity. And that's generally what communities are doing now. It's just the action was taken and voted on, and then the details are left for people to, find in the videos that are recorded.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. I agree that I do like to have some of it in, some of what this discussion was,
Mhm.
especially the board discussion. I think there's a little discretion that has to be used. I don't want our minutes to just be 100% just the vote, but
Oh, for sure.
this
Yep.
seems a little,
I think you could say public comment was taken.
yeah, for this specific one, I think we could the easiest way to clean this up would be to get rid of the attempt to,
Summarize the
Yeah.
speakers.
yeah, there's some intention put on the speakers. Everyone had a little more nuance than just supports or
Mhm.
opposed or, but
right.
it's a good attempt. Let's keep an eye on it.
I'd like it to still be clear there that that it was made clear by the applicant that the floats would be open to the public that was the central thing that I wanted as part of that conversation on the record. I'm trying to find if that's in there,
No, it isn't.
but to me, that was like a clear sort of, I don't want to say promise that was made. And I would just like that to be reflected.
So that would be a thing when certain commitments are made during the meeting, those commitments or significant concerns should be documented. Other than that, maybe the list of so-and-so commented about is
Yeah.
fine.
And maybe sometimes it's on us to make an effort to specifically say that, we want the minutes to reflect something.
That's true. That's a good point.
Um,
Yeah.
But most of the time it works out okay. It's just, this is why we go through this process of reading back over it to make sure that it kind of reflects what we, the key points that we wanted it to reflect. And here I just feel like it reflects a lot of things that were not necessary, but is missing that central point.
Would you like to add to the minutes, Allison, that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the applicant, the whoever it was speaking on behalf of the project, which I guess would have been a combination between Will Gartley and Drew Lyman. They, it was asked about public use of the proposed floats, and it was stated that the floats would be open for the public to walk on them. Just if that's,
Mhm.
as long as that's
Yep.
in there, then
So anything else to these minutes, to the June 4th minutes? Can I get a motion, or Allison, can I get well, first of all, we have to potentially, we have a motion made and seconded. So we'll have to take a vote on that, but keep in mind that that vote would not include Alice's proposed adjustment to the minutes.
Right.
So those in favor of approving the minutes as written?
We don't vote because we weren't at that meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Opposed? All right, 3-0. Now I need another motion.
I would move that we approve the minutes as, with the amendments discussed.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion. All those in favor? Motion carries 3-0. The June 18th minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion. All those in favor? 5-0. Item 3 on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda. 3A is the approval of annual request for a block party on July 20th from 4 to 8 p.m. on Central Street between Cross and Trim Streets. And 3B is the consideration of approval for benches for People Place fundraiser. Any comments or objections to the consent agenda?
I remember last year, people enjoyed the benches. Those were nice. I missed them when they were gone myself.
Okay. Seeing no objections, the consent agenda is hereby adopted. Item 4 on tonight's agenda is select board reports. Ken, would you want to start us off tonight?
Sure. I attended the Cemetery Association meeting. They're great and effective body. Their meeting lasted 17 minutes and they covered everything and they were done. It was chaired by Chip Late, who brought to our attention that he has moved to Lincolnville. Therefore, he cannot be an official voting member of the Cemetery Association. However, he's been on that committee for 23 years. He wants to remain active, and the committee would like to see him remain as a non-voting member and as a non-voting chair. I couldn't find any reason not to. I did want to follow that up with you guys, but if it sounds good to you, they would like to proceed that way.
I would have to check the bylaws there for town committees. Most of them don't have a requirement that somebody be a Camden resident. Did they discuss that for that one? There is something in the association bylaws?
There's a requirement that the committee members be.
For that one, there
be
is.
Camden residents, yes.
Is that an ordinance?
It's in the charter, so it must be a.
I don't know if it's in the charter or not, but I'm totally in support of Chip continuing. He's been super valuable. I would just want to check to make sure that we're not voting to violate our own.
Yeah, I'm not sure. if
Ordinance,
this requires
but-
a vote at all.
I don't think we need to take a vote tonight. Audra, would you mind
I'll
researching
look
that
into
and let us
I
know?
think it'll be like the Cemetery Association's bylaws or whatever charter they have.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
let
happy
us
to
know.
take a
The
look.
town ordinance, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's it. Tom.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Allison?
The Conservation Commission normally would meet tomorrow, tomorrow, Wednesday. They are canceling their meeting for July and instead going to do a stormwater mapping workshop. There's also been a little bit of discussion about the pesticide, discussion. They would, of course, be interested in that, but they're gonna wait and see what we talk about tonight. The other thing that's gonna be happening is watershed boundary signs are going up. They, over a few months, last year developed kind of like those signs that you see when you're driving around. It says entering the Belfast Bay watershed. So there are signs like that that are, say, entering the McGonagall watershed that are going to be going up. Ideally, we would also coordinate with the other towns that are in the watershed to maybe have those signs go up on major roads there too. But that is it for me.
Thank you, Allison. Susan?
Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
I don't have anything to report either.
Neither do I. So item number 5 tonight is town manager's report. Audra?
All right, so I've been asked to give an update on the Montgomery Dam gift and the project or projects that came out of that. So to date, 56,000 of the total 157,000 has been invoiced. So that includes 31,000 in masonry repointing on the sluiceway, 7,000 for gate fabrication, and 18,800 for gate installation. So the remaining 101,000 is allocated to the engineering, fabrication, and installation of an access bridge to get the landscaping crew out to the island, and also the landscaping work. So currently, when it comes to the that part of the project, the engineering design plans for the bridge are being finalized, and they're going to be sent to Rockport Steel this week, and then fabrication will start next week. I engaged Andy Shepard, who's the former CEO and general manager of Saddleback Mountain. He was also at the Outdoor Sports Institute. He was with Maine Winter Sports Center, Big Rock, Black Mountain, and Quaggy Joe ski areas to come on as a consultant for the Snow Bowl. And while he's there, Andy's going to be developing a 4-season master plan for both the Snow Bowl, the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area. He's also going to develop and help implement standard operating procedures for the Snow Bowl, developing a marketing plan for the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area. He's going to help in the recruitment and training of a general manager for the Snow Bowl Ragged Mountain Recreation Area, and assist with the further development of a governance structure and advisory group out there. So we're really excited about this. Andy's gotten to work already. We've signed up through Andy to the Indy Pass program. So that gives anybody who participates in that program 2 free lift tickets, where they'll be able to come to the Snow Bowl on a 3rd discounted day. And so there are about 180 ski areas across the world that participate in this program. And for many smaller independent ski areas like the Snow Bowl, it's been pretty transformational in terms of the new visitors and the revenue that they've gotten from the Indy Pass program. And one of the things that we're very excited about, and because Andy's so involved in this program, there's a point of sale system that's owned by that same program that members of Indy Pass can join and become use that point of sale system. And we've been fast tracked to participate in that, which is wonderful because we've just had a lot of problems with both the past point of sale system that was out at the Snow Bowl and then the current one that we're using. We just haven't been able to get the sort of data or back end sort of financial reporting that we need to really start being able to target, who we market to and figure out like the effectiveness of certain, types of tickets and passes and that sort of thing. So I think that's, really great, exciting progress in the very early days of having Andy out there. So last week on Thursday, I attended the Midcoast Council of Governments General Assembly meeting. I'm the vice president of the board there, and it was a great meeting. They gave an overview of a lot of data that they've been collecting to help towns with individual projects that we might have to be more competitive for different funding opportunities that we might want to collectively or individually apply for. And they're also using that as sort of the basis for the development of the whole Midcoast region's they call it the CEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. So that was a really good meeting, well attended. And while I was there, since it was at the city of Rockland, I used that opportunity to visit one of my colleagues, the city manager for Rockland. And we're kind of at a similar stage where pretty recently they passed a few major bonds to address some of their inflow and infiltration issues with their sewer system and some of their failing stormwater issues as well. So we talked about working together to apply for congressionally delegated spending. So that's the earmark funding that you work with congressional representatives to apply for. And I think that's a real exciting opportunity for both our communities, because if we can apply as a region, we're going to be much more competitive than if we do it individually. So that's something that we're going to start working on with the city of Rockland. And it's all part of us sort of preparing for, the bond projects that we're going to be working on.
Thank you, Audra.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for Audra following up on the Montgomery gift. My understanding was that their gift was to be broken into 3 parts on repairing the masonry of the dam, the sluice gate, and the landscaping. And my understanding was that there would be a temporary gangway rather than a 4-season bridge out there. So I'd like to have some clarification on the bridge and on where the masonry repair is as well.
So the masonry repair portion is finished. The access bridge out to the island, it's similar engineering considerations regardless of how it's going to be used if you're traversing people across there.
Is that a seasonal bridge?
I mean, it'll be up to us how we want to do that. I think it could be lifted out and be seasonal if that's what we choose to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, item 6A on tonight's agenda is the award of the RFP for the harbor resiliency. Audra, Jeremy, who wants to do an intro?
I can, Audra, if you'd like.
Sure.
So we're really excited. This has been a long time coming. You may remember we had applied for funding from the Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future as part of the climate action grants that were going out to communities. And we had also applied to the Department of Marine Resources for Shore and Harbor Planning Grant for a total of $60,000 worth of grant funding. And that funding was originally earmarked to go to a proposal to make the public landing more resilient. And we've had a lot of storms, you all know that, that have been devastating to the harbor and to public and private infrastructure. But that storm in December of 2022, right? 2022 did some damage to our public landing, and we made some very significant and robust improvements that made our public landing more resilient. So that happened, but then the January storms came. So we had initially planned this project to do construction drawings to make the harbor more resilient. And then the January storms that came back to back this January were so devastating that we had, and I briefed the select board on this previously, that we had made the decision that we were going to reach out to the state funders and see if we can transition from a public landing project that would provide construction drawings to actually do a inner harbor and a portion out of the outer harbor resiliency plan, resiliency planning exercise. And the state agencies were thrilled that they thought that was a great idea, especially in Camden Harbor, because, we have some of the property in the inner harbor, but it is predominantly privately owned, generally with seawalls, except at the head of the harbor. And most of the buildings are first floor elevations are below the flood level. And so they're definitely impacted by storm surge and sea level rise. So we had put out an RFP looking for consulting firms to do a resiliency plan, both public and private, and provide a resilience roadmap, if you will, for public and private projects and demonstrations that, again, public and private property owners can do in the future to address sea level rise concerns. The project has a budget of about $67,000. $7,000 of that is staff time, cost share, like my time, if you will. And then $60,000 was the grant funding. That grant funding was going directly to a consultant to do this work. We had received 5 proposals. We had a lot of interest in the project. The 5 firms were Fuss O'Neill, along with FB Environmental and Woods Hole Group. That was one kind of multidisciplinary team. Another one was Richardson Associates and WSP. Richardson Associates are architects, WSP's the engineering firm. And then Sebago Technics, Thornton Tomasetti, and Viewshed and Tech Associates. The evaluation team, which was myself, Justin Gove, the town engineer, Audra, Dave St. Laurent, and Shenley Neely, the town planner. We individually ranked all these these proposals. Then we got together as a group, went through them, and came up with the top 2 proposals, and those were from Fuss and O'Neill, FB Environmental, and the Woods Hole Group. And then the second one was Richardson Associates and WSP. We did an interview with both of those firms, spent about an hour and a half with each of the firms, talked about the project and what their deliverables would be and how they would execute the project. And then ultimately the staff was very excited about Richardson Associates project and their proposal. And think they're going to do a great job. Their final product, that resilience roadmap is going to be really something, I think. And there will be a series, just so you know, there will be a series of workshops and charrettes with public and private property owners happening likely in September. And then a final product will come out in December. So with that, again, Richardson, I put it in the memo. They're an award-winning landscape architecture firm based out of Saco, Maine. Their project manager is Blake Sanborn. He's actually a Camden resident.
Jeremy, do you want to actually stop now because Blake's in the room and I'm
Perfect. There you go. Great.
Yes,
would
Blake-
you like to
Blake,
come up
please
and
come
just
up.
introduce yourself?
Thank you, Jeremy, for going through the decision process. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Hello all. So Blake Sanborn with Richardson and Associates and the WSP team and Camden resident, as has been noted. Some of you may have heard some of the talks I've been giving leading up to this event. Before I even knew that Camden had an actionable project, my passion is looking at resilience through the lens of design in partnership with engineers and the communities that we serve. And so I had given talks along those lines, thinking about climate change right here in Camden and what we might do in terms of a process that could engage the entire community, which is where we need to start, I believe. And those talks led to, being able to put our foot in the ring for this opportunity. And we're so pleased to be able to be getting started and knowing that this would be televised. I just want everyone to know that it is just starting. So we would absolutely welcome everyone to participate, and it's going to be a very collaborative process. There isn't an answer yet. We're going to work on this together, so please join us.
Thanks, Blake.
Blake, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So that's it, Tom. I think all we would need from you folks, if you have any other questions, I'm here. But just again, it's staff recommendation to award it to Richardson and Associates and WP as the team. And then we'll drop that agreement and get the project rolling and have it done by December, because that's when reports need to be to the state agencies.
I do have a question.
Ken, please.
Thanks, Jeremy. I do have a question about how far this project goes. You will have drawn plans for every town-owned property around the harbor. Is that part of the deliverables? And the other half of the question was funding. Will this group help identify and apply for grants to do the actual work?
Yeah, not as part of this project, Ken. They have provided, and I've communicated with Blake previously. And I'm in tune with a lot of the grant funding that's out there regularly. So, I know Blake has provided some information. We'll continue to provide that when he finds it. As far as the project, so what's going to end up happening? We're going to use existing data that's out there, whether it be from NOAA, the state, our own route mapping, our own Lauren Cafe years ago, who's now with FB Environmental, actually did a story map of sea level rise based on the scenarios for Camden Harbor. So that will all be provided, Ken. We are not going to do design plans for every single property. That's just for, that would cost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what's going to happen is we're going to look at from Steamboat Landing and the Bean Yard all the way over to the Yacht Club. So it's the Inner Harbor plus going around Lyman Morris to include Steamboat Landing and the Bean Yard, and look at all of those properties, engage all of those property owners, and come up with scenarios and kind of best management practices when you look at floodproofing your buildings, when you look at raising, when you look at retreating, when you look at improving all that infrastructure. That's what it's going to be, is provide us with a roadmap and property owners with a roadmap on how they should proceed, because we have to be very judicious with these funds. This is a public project, so we're providing more of an educational outreach to those property owners so that they could engage. And likely what will come, Ken, will be they'll have a better understanding and idea on what they need to do. And then we would be able to provide them resources and consultants out there that do this work that they could individually seek projects, funding on their own to do, because again, that's private property. But public property, we're always continually looking for grant funding to make our properties more resilient. That help?
Yes, thanks. I was wondering specifically about the Harbor Park seawall, whether that's part of the purview of this project.
It's in the geographic area for sure. So there will be touching on seawalls, on public infrastructure and private infrastructure, and ways to address those in the future. We can't possibly do design plans for projects along the harbor. Just, we don't have the funding to do that. That would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grant funding. And this was a $60,000 grant. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
The funding for the Harbor Park seawall design is all included in the coastal resilience grant funding that we have through NOAA.
Yeah,
Right.
Viewshed's currently working on designs for that.
And Jeremy, they came in on the $60,000 budget, Richardson Associates.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very unique RFP, Tom, because there was a dedicated amount. I knew how much, and I talked to consultants in the state previously putting the grant together. We knew that we had $60,000 of funding available. And so we knew kind of what we needed, what we would get with that $60,000. So every project came in at $60,000, $59,400, $500, $61,000. And then they had included some other additional tasks that they could do for additional funding. And so we still have that out there from those firms, but we don't have any additional funding allocated to the project. So everyone came in at $60,000 for the most part.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any questions or comments on this? Motion to approve or otherwise?
Sounds like we got a heck of a deal. Thank you.
Good.
You move, Susan makes a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Item 6B on tonight's agenda is the election of member for the Legislative Policy Committee for the MMA.
All right, so this is one where we don't necessarily always bring it to the select board for a vote, because these people are, nominated, and it goes out to all of the communities in the geographic area that they represent. And you really don't have much of a choice. It's just whoever's nominated you have to vote on. However, since our very own Carrie Leishman is on the ballot, we thought that it would be a good showing of support to officially have the select board vote on this ballot and send it back into MMA. And Carrie took over from, I forget who it was. It was somebody in the Midcoast who was on the LPC that had to step down. And so Carrie was, got into the role that way, and has done a fantastic job and has been really, really helpful with, a lot of different legislation focused around like property taxation. So he's been a great resource for the LPC, because typically it's a lot of municipal managers and select board members who don't necessarily have that specific expertise in assessing and property tax and those sorts of policy issues.
So he likes what he He likes being a part of this.
He does.
And this helps him in his job with the town by being aware, or
He's had pretty good influence when there have been some, I'd say that the Legislative Policy Committee and a lot of people who are on the municipal end that are, doing work in Augusta, it's like playing goalie right now, where they're trying to keep some of the less helpful things from out. And so I think Carrie's done a good job with that and sort of redirecting certain things to make them more advantageous for municipalities. So I think he's been very effective, and he's somebody that they listen to because he, is very knowledgeable when it comes to assessing.
I agree. Carrie is more than just an assessor. Carrie is an advocate for smart assessing, and I've witnessed it personally myself and other things in that realm.
Oh, yeah, and Carrie is really outstanding at that part and lots of other things. I think that overall, the legislative policy positions that MMA has taken over the years have been way off base a lot of the time, and frustrating because they speak for, municipalities, and oftentimes go, I think, way outside of their lane in terms of things that municipalities would necessarily agree on. But I think Carrie's really good with things like making sure that when the legislature votes on things, they're not just inadvertently passing some responsibility off onto municipalities that then have to fund their decisions. So I think Carrie's great. I wish we could look for more opportunities to have a greater voice in, how the MMA lobbying works, but that's for another future.
do you need a motion for this, or what do we need?
It's an action item. We're going to vote. We're going to vote to give Carrie this.
Carrie
I'll
and
support.
Kara George from Thomaston. She's the other.
Oh, I thought we were choosing in between them. So I was like,
No,
okay,
no.
It
You're
says
voting
vote
on
for
both
two.
of them.
Or the write-in.
Yes.
Okay, I move that we support the nomination or election, or are we vote? What's the wording? That we support
The election.
the election of Carrie Leishman and Kara George to the MMA Legislative Policy Committee.
I'll second that. You got there first.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Excellent. Thank you. We're moving along quickly tonight. Item 7A is the overview of the articles passed in the most recent town election, June 11th. Audra, can you lead us through those?
Certainly. And my apologies for not having this ready and in your packet. What I'll do is I will, because I did write something up, so I will go back and include it in the packet because I know folks like to look at that, and I'll make sure that that's there, but I'll also have an area on the website under like election results where people will be able to look at a summary of this. So just to kind of go through high level and, explain some of the next steps with some of the bigger articles that passed. I'm just going to go from, kind of top to bottom and try to, get through it pretty quickly. There's some where there's a lot more detail than what I'll go into. And, I'm sure we'll come back to them because they're big priorities for the town. So Articles 3 and 4, that was the warrant articles that brought the town into compliance with the housing opportunity legislation that was passed in 2022. So what it did for our zoning code was amending the definition of accessory apartments and then eliminating the parking requirements. So these amendments will go into effect immediately. So any property that's the primary residence of the owner will be able to build an accessory apartment and is exempted from, currently there's a 1 parking space per dwelling unit requirement, but that will be something that those accessory apartments are exempted from. So Articles 5, 6, and 7, so that dealt with the regulation of short-term rentals. And it was both in the zoning chapter as well as the licensing chapter. So now that short-term rentals are a definition that's independent from a dwelling unit, they're no longer required to stick to that 7-day minimum stay requirement. And they're permitted in any zone that currently allows residential development. They're also going to require annual licensing, life safety inspections, and they have to demonstrate an adequate septic system or sewer connection. So in order to implement this, Jeremy's he's going to be doing a request for proposals for a software solution, because in order to implement and enforce this in a manner that's just realistic for workloads and is cost effective, we're going to need to have software to help us with this. So that's going to be happening within the next month or so. And we'll be reviewing those proposals, and then we'll come back to the board, similarly to how we did with the Harbor Resilience Plan, where we'll go through, the proposals that we got and how we rank them and which ones we recommend to you. So, in the meantime, we're still, going to encourage anybody who owns a short-term rental to register them with the town. And that'll give us the ability to more easily communicate with anybody who has a short-term rental, as we move forward with the licensing process and program. Jeremy, do you have anything to add to that one in particular?
You're on mute.
Jeremy,
Great summary. The one thing I would add is that we are currently working on we're getting a lot of questions already, people planning ahead, which is great, which is what we're encouraging. And we're going to try to roll this out as soon as possible so that we can start doing inspections and get people lined up so that come January 1, when it becomes effective, people have their licenses and they can move forward. So we're actively working on implementing it and preparing some documents for the public, and we'll post those on the website. Realtors and accommodation outfits are reaching out to us if we can provide them some guidance moving forward. And so we're finalizing that in the next week or so that'll be out there for people.
Audra, was this, was this a close vote or was it a large majority for 5, 6, and 7? There's a lot of discussion, so I didn't see the final vote numbers.
I think by 150 to 200 or so votes, Chris.
Okay, out of like 2,000?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I can give you.
let's not get into vote
Yeah.
counts. That can be easily researched.
Sure.
Yep.
All right. So for Articles 8, 9, and 10, so that had to do with creating more rigorous standards for the construction and maintenance of residential piers. And that was an amendment to both the zoning chapter as well as the harbor and waterways chapter. So, any applications for private residential piers will now be subject to this criteria. And it also just, laid out a clearer process and site plan approval criteria as well. So Article 11, that was the confirmation from voters that they did not want the town to sell the tannery and that they want it to be retained for community purposes. So the select board will make a decision on the next steps, but it's likely that, any sort of funding for next steps and planning and what's going to be done with that site would be something that would be dealt with in the FY26 budget cycle. So Articles 12 through 17, I won't go into much detail about those because those are the annual procedural articles that have to do with things like, setting the due date for taxes and interest on unpaid taxes and that sort of thing. Article 18 was the bond question. So that authorizes the town to borrow the 12.5 million for sewer, stormwater, active transportation, and other roadway improvements. So, implementing a bond it's a really large project that involves a bunch of different departments. So there's a number of different things that are going to be happening at once. One of the most important and first steps in all of this is coming up with a financing plan. So the finance director is working with our bond counsel and a few other advisors to research our different financing options and figure out the sequence of borrowing. So it's things like, figuring out what are the options that are going to have the lowest interest rates For a municipality, it's general obligation bonds, but because those need to be spent within a 2-year period, we're looking into a series of bond anticipation notes and how we sequence them and how we time that with the projects that we have coming online. So the very first construction projects that are going to be ready to go, and there's still some engineering design work that needs to be done before they're going to be bid ready and we can go out with them, are the we're calling it now the Molyneux Road Sewer Extension, which will connect Mountainside to our system, as well as the John Street project. And those are really the first that are ready to go because they have a lot of external funding that's going to help fund them. So with the Molyneux Road Extension, we've got the congressionally delegated spending of $1.3 million, as well as a community development block grant. And John Street, we have funding from MDOT. It's $750,000 for that one. So because of the external funding partners and where those are in terms of readiness, they're going to be over the next 2 years. So it's looking like 2026 will be when construction is actually completed on those projects. There's a lot of other work that needs to happen in the meantime, though, for all the other projects that are coming behind. So it's things like project planning and prioritization. So we're going to be doing a bunch of sewer and stormwater cammering work because that helps us. Really, the sewer is the thing that leads all of these projects, the condition of sewer lines, because it's the deepest infrastructure when you look at the ground and what's underneath. And it's the biggest ticket item. So we'll have a matrix that looks at, the sewer, the stormwater, main water and what their plans are. We'll look at the Pathways Master Plan and what's a priority there. And also, external funding like with MDOT, because if it's a state road, we have the ability to work with them to get additional funding, as well as things like, what I was talking about, working with the city of Rockland on congressionally delegated spending. So that's the planning that primarily the Public Works Department will be doing in the background. People like myself and Jeremy will be looking at these external funding opportunities to leverage that bond money. Then we'll go to more of the communication and outreach. So for example, with the projects that we know are first on the list, we'll be doing neighborhood meetings because they're sewer and extension projects. We're going to have a Inspector Connect message that gets out because that's going to be something that we need to look at for people who are on private septic systems. Is their system at the end of its life? If it is, that's a great time to connect. If it's a newer system, we don't want to make people connect until it's at the end of its usable life. So the Inspector Connect message will be pushing that out there, when we're more construction ready. And also figuring out other ways to give project updates like text alerts, email updates, press releases, project newsletters, that sort of thing. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything from that. So I guess, long story short, a major bond is a huge project that's a real multidisciplinary effort for the town. So that's going to be sort of an all hands on deck for the next few years. Articles 19 and 20, that was the approval of the budget. So some high level things that are coming out of that. There were new positions that were approved. So in July, there's going to be recruiting for the planning and development, or already recruited for the planning and development administrative assistant, which is now a 40-hour position, and also the communications position in my office. In September, the fire department will be recruiting 2 new firefighters. In November, they'll be recruiting 1 more. And we talked about Parks and Rec and the Snow Bowl. So Andy Shepard will be helping with the recruitment and the training of the new general manager, as well as helping with the, any other training out there. We have procurement and purchase of capital equipment. So we have the plow trucks that were approved. There's a sidewalk loader, harbor floats, and then we have the site work and the temporary building out to the Snow Bowl. We also have the procurement and purchase of some non-capital equipment, but still large items like the speed sign boards and the rapid flashing beacons to implement the traffic calming and pedestrian safety program. So Article 21 was the purchase of the new groomer. So for those of you who were on the board in the winter, you remember that we talked about quotes that we received to get an idea of, what was going to be the most cost-effective way to, go about purchasing the new groomer. So, going into, town meeting, we already had an idea of what it was going to cost us, and the whole warrant article question was based off the low quote that we received from that. So we're really ready to move forward with the purchasing of the new groomer. Article 22, that was the transfer of surplus to the Snowball Special Revenue Fund to cover the operating shortfalls from the past 2 years. So the funds have already been transferred. And that's an overview of warrant articles.
Thank you, Audra. Anybody on the board have any comments or questions on the warrant articles and the summary?
That was great. I liked that we did that.
Yeah, me too. Chris asked to do that. I thought it was a
I think
really
that
good idea.
sometimes that's a good thing.
Well, it's
to do.
good to know so people can
Just to
think about,
remind, yeah.
these are the things that
And now we're
went
gonna-
through.
Right. And now we're going to start doing, these things now or these things later.
Yeah, I appreciate Jeremy mentioning it's like January on the, whatever it was, short-term rental.
Short-term
thing.
rentals.
And, it's just a reminder for people on the timeframes involved and the things involved and the steps.
And for us too,
Right. Yep.
so, yeah.
And it was good for us to see the town's support of the different articles, like especially the snowball pieces that, we did not know where the town stood on that. And that was, an important item to, call out and see that there is still the town support, not only in the new equipment for a short season, but also, when it does go in the red to handle it. And I was really encouraged in the ability to get Andy Shepherd here to work with the snowball. Again, there's town interest in the snowball. The work that he did at Black Mountain and turning that around, that was terrific. Somehow Audra brought him out of retirement to go ahead and help.
Well,
That's great.
And I do want
That's
to
awesome.
put a thank you out to Peter Lindquist, who encouraged us to reach out to Andy Shepherd. So thank you, Peter.
Oh,
It
good.
was
Oh,
very, very helpful.
Well, that's good. Thank you. I appreciate the update. I look forward to be part of the packet in the minutes that way then. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the review?
oh, sorry. This is just every time that there is an election, people are like, oh, is the town going to post the results? And I know that everybody always says, oh, they're on there, Allison, or we always do put them on there, but I think they might be on there in a couple different places, and some of them stopped being updated in 2022, or just, something to strive for in the future.
But-
That it's nice if people can, they're counting them, then they give them to Linda Clancy and the Camden Herald, and
It is on there. Election results are on the website,
Okay.
because I was thinking of reading off votes to all of you, and then I thought, no, I don't need to do that. But when I was sort of going through this exercise, I did see that they were posted on there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Last item on tonight's agenda, 7B, is a potential pesticide herbicide amendment to the Code of Ordinances. And I know that we have a citizens action group that is here to speak on that tonight. Joanne, would you mind coming forward? Thank you.
I have something for all of you.
Please, yes.
May I give it to you? Is it a treat? Pardon me? Is it a treat? It's a glass of wine. This is for you, Tom. Would you kindly copy this and give it to everybody?
I will. I'll pass it out to everybody.
This are just bullet points that I copied for everybody here.
Thank you.
Sure. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is all the ordinances
Sure.
and fine structures and things like that.
Thank you.
And then one more. They're just bullet points. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Joanne, we do ask that you introduce yourself and then, Camden, as a Camden resident as well.
My name is Joanne Wilson. I'm from Camden, Maine. And thank you for your consideration in hearing what I have to say, or what I'm representing, the small group that I'm a part of. So I'm part of a small group who joined together. We talked about it for years, never made it happen. Finally, it had nothing to do with the bond incident, by the way. It was just us very, very concerned as we saw lawn pesticides multiply and multiply and multiply as we were walking around town. So we got together and we're very concerned. We are very concerned about the scientifically supported evidence on the impact of pesticides on the health of adults, children, pets, groundwater, soil, our own harbor, insects, birds, pollinators, wildlife. I may have forgotten one thing, but you can understand that it's both human life and the natural world. There's a good amount of respectable and legitimate research that has been done on the damaging effects of pesticides to aquatic life and to human life. Some of them range anywhere from severe skin irritations for humans to cancer. Our objective, we have two objectives for our group. The one is short-term, the other is long-term. The short-term one is that we want Camden to be a model, to be a champion, not only in this state, but in New England and outside of New England. We want to be progressive in understanding and trying to restrict the use of pesticides as a way to safeguard the health of both people, pets, and the natural world. The second long-term objective for our group is we've joined a little bit with Rockland. Annette Nagel has come to, well, you met her, Tom. Annette Nagel has joined us. She's from Rockland. To join up with Belfast, Northport, Lincolnville, Camden, Rockport, and Rockland, and to create a coalition. So it's, we might name it, it's just off the top of my head, Friends for a Healthy Penobscot Bay. Because the fish don't know if we go ahead and pass an ordinance, they don't learn in their school that Camden Harbor's clean. Hey guys, it's clean here. Let's not go to the other places. Penobscot Bay, there's a foreseeable risk where we need to look at the entire bay. So that's our second objective. I will talk about the strategies of how we will achieve those objectives later, but I want you to know what we have found out so far. I spoke with the Ogunquit Code Enforcement Officer. Ogunquit was the first municipality in the state of Maine to ban pesticides. Mind you, there are 33 municipalities right now in the state of Maine that restrict or ban pesticide use. I'm talking about for cosmetic lawns, trees, shrubs, okay? So the fellow's name is Tyler McCusker. And he said, I asked him, well, how do you enforce it? And he told me how they enforce it there. And I submitted to, they put together, I can go into that, but I don't know that that's necessary at the moment. I have all of that in the material that you'll get. The ordinance for Ogunquit is in the material that Tom will give to you. The second person I called is Andy McClellan, and he's the code enforcement officer of the city of Hallowell. And he deferred to a woman named Rosemary Princer, who's the chairman of the Conservation Commission. And she's a funny lady. She said, you know, I never thought it would be doable. I never in a million years imagined that we would be able to pass an ordinance as chairperson of the Conservation Commission. And I said, well, I'm calling you to find out how you enforce it. She said, well, how do you enforce any ordinance? I said, good point. She said, what they did was they didn't know, the Conservation Commission, funny enough, didn't know that there was a small grassroots group of 4 people, similar to the group that I'm in, that did 2 years worth of work in researching the effects of pesticides, what they did they do to animals, for instance. I have a whole material on just research on what pesticides create bladder cancer in dogs, what pesticides create neurotoxicity in cats. These, I'm still talking about cosmetic lawn pesticides, okay? And so she said what they did is they put together a grassroots group. The grassroots group put together educational material. They provided flyers, speakers from Beyond Pesticides. Another fellow who is local, he creates alternatives to pesticides. So, you know, to me, you can't take things away from people without giving them something. And so they have a whole list of natural solutions to the lawn pesticides and chemicals that were previously used. So Hallowell is in a grace period right now. So they're in 2024 grace period where the code enforcement officer has written a letter to all of the companies and to residents that this will be going into effect 2025. In the meantime, Hallowell felt very strongly that, you know, companies are just arbitrarily, you know, they're spraying chemicals on people's lawns, but nobody knows even what the ingredients are. So they require during the grace period that the companies have to list what the ingredients are on their little signs that they put on the lawns, which is smart. Again, it's informative, it's educating people. Ogunquit, they had a grace period as well. They also had a grassroots group that worked. It was called Healthy Rivers and Streams, that's still in existence. And they did the same thing. They provided education. Hallowell, this group, I think I copied the website. It's called Green Growth. It's a brilliant website that these people from Hallowell put together. Tom has it. And they just focused on education. So really, the gist of it all for our group, let me tell you a few things else, also what we did. We called the Maine Board of Pesticide Control. We've reached out to them several times. They have not called back. But in the meantime, what we found out is in order to pass an ordinance, to put an ordinance on a ballot, you must get the Maine Board of Pesticide Control approval. They have to review the ordinance first. Now, Rockland made a mistake. They didn't know this. They wanted to put the ordinance on the ballot, but it never went. It was void because the Maine Pesticide Control Board did not see and review or approve of it. So it has to be approved by them first. So we don't have a lot of time if you're thinking about November. To me, the group in Hallowell did a lion's share of work, as did people here in Camden, Marcia Smith, Molly Stone, and others that I don't know. They did a tremendous amount of work to pass the town land, the library lawn, the amphitheater, I think down by Lake Beach, town land that does not use pesticides. So we do have somewhat of an ordinance in place, but we don't have it for private properties, right? So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, but what we need to do, as far as I'm concerned with my group, it's not just me, is to know the appetite of the residents here. Who are they? What do they want? How much do they know? So one of the strategies to meet our objectives, the short-term objective, is education, is information, is to disseminate information to let people know what the impacts of what they're using are. It's our responsibility, at least for me as a citizen, if I know that glyphosate creates autism, and there's tons of research that came out of MIT about that, I wouldn't want to deny someone that knowledge. And so I think once people are educated, then they can make choices. But to just, and it would be, it's kind of like the way cigarettes were. That's the way I look at it. Everybody smoked, people smoked in the 70s and the 80s. And all of a sudden the Surgeon General says, gee, smoking creates lung cancer, is a propensity for lung cancer or cardiovascular disease or respiratory distress. So once they knew that, well, then you started seeing restaurants that had smoker sections. The back of airplanes had smoker sections, which really wasn't that bright. The back of buses, you could smoke at the back, right? And then all of a sudden you notice now restaurants ban smoking and places ban smoking. And then I was at a party the other day where there were about 25 people, and I looked out the window and there were 3 people smoking out on the grass. That's called self-enforcement. And that's what our objective is. That is our strategy to support any ordinance that possibly gets put on the ballot. Self-enforcement is stronger than government and town enforcement, as far as I'm concerned. And the ordinance can back up self-enforcement. But people need to know and to make decisions about it. And there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, I don't care, you got to die of something. And my answer to that is you don't have to be sick to die. And so, you don't. And so the other thing that I know some people are concerned about, and both Ogunquit and Hallowell they have waivers. So it's not black and white. The world doesn't operate in black and white. There's got to be gray. So there's waivers such as for ticks, for brown-tailed moths, for mosquitoes, for invasive plants. There's waivers built into their ordinances. So I think, to me, it's a developmental evolutionary step that we're taking. And there are steps to it. And we need to kind of slow the train down a little bit and not skip the developmental steps that give you the best results. That we need to be strategic and smart about how you get an ordinance passed. That's how, I don't have anything to do with town government. This is new to me, but it's just basic common sense, which I think died 10 years ago. But so that's basically it. That's where we stand. And you'll find out how the ordinances are employed and affected in that material. Hallowell will start their ordinance in 2025. I can tell you just quickly, Ogunquit, what they did was they wrote a letter to all of the residents of the town and to the companies that were spraying and using pesticides. And they told them that, right now it's not allowed. And they have a fine structure and they cite them and they fine them if anybody sprays. And I said, well, what do you do, Tyler? Do you ride around? He goes, you know what? The people voted for it. The people can let us know. The people need to take responsibility for it. Again, that's where education comes in and information. So that's where we are right now. We plan on gleaning from the Hallowell group. So I spoke to Rosemary today, the people who did the website and went door to door. They canvassed door to door. They put together flyers. They had speakers. They went to farmers markets, the transfer stations, libraries, and they went to door and got 300 postcards signed by the residences, whether they opposed it or they supported it. And so it was real groundwork, and they rolled their sleeves up and they did it. And so we're prepared to do that, my small little group. So I will be in touch with, or one of the members of my group, that's his job, I think, to be in touch with the Hallowell group and find out what they did. And they said they're willing to help us. as is the chairperson for the Conservation Commission, and Tyler, who's the code enforcement officer in Agunquit, and Rosemary, who's the CC chairman at Hallowell. So that's all we've done so far. It's not much, but it's evident to me that there must be education in people's ability to understand how it affects them and give them a choice. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Joanne. Do you mind staying up for just? Thank you, Joanne. Do you mind staying up for a minute just in case the board has any questions for you? Allison, please.
I just want to say thank you. You've already
Very
done
welcome.
a ton of research, and it's just so nice to have somebody coming in wanting to be on an agenda to talk about the community good, not just a individual concern. So thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm the liaison for the Conservation Commission. Been getting emails from Marcia for years about all the work that she did in the past and sort of the hope of continuing that beyond town, just town properties. So it's really exciting to see the inertia, and at some point it would probably make sense to, I know there are some people on the Conservation Commission that are really interested in this too. So just to try to have as much education as possible and figure out how you can be supported. So,
Well, thank you. Marcia has been behind the scenes. She's a very generous, very bright, very astute, involved person, and she's been behind the scenes.
yeah,
So we appreciate her investment.
wonderful. Well, thanks, and let me know how I can help or how the Conservation
I will.
Commission can help.
Thanks very much.
Susan?
Thank you so much. Well, you're a very articulate spokesperson for the whole project.
Thank you.
Tremendously effective encapsulation of what you've done so far. And I really especially appreciate the synergy with the other towns
Mm-hmm.
and looking at the watershed and the bay as a
Mhm.
whole and impressing upon people the impact that we can have. It makes me a little nervous in an enforcement mechanism that requires that people report other people's actions. That could be contentious among neighbors. We don't want to have people telling on their neighbors about what they're doing. But I suppose if that's the way to do it, if it's worked in other communities, but I can see that could be a little bit fraught.
Well, let me just
But-
say this. If they're educated, they're going to find out that when you spray a lawn, it doesn't just sit in that person's
Right,
lawn.
right.
It travels.
Yeah.
It travels in the air. A person I know very well is Dr. Stephanie Seneff. She's out of MIT. She did tons of research on glyphosate. She's written several books and has done a lot of scientific research. She says it's in the air. If you can smell it, it's going into your body. And I was walking down Eaton Ave. It was like a cloud of pesticides. I had to turn around. So with information, perhaps a neighbor could go to another person and say, I just learned, rather than turning them in, because that's not part of the education. So there may be a flow to it. There may be an interaction. There can be a cascade of things that come out of education. And hey, the other thing is, there's ordinances for like dogs barking, right? And I've called and I have had no problem with that.
No, but I think you're right. I think that's a very evolved way of looking at it, of elevating it to creating an opportunity for people to educate one another.
Correct.
And rather than have it be punitive, but have there be a beneficial conversation that's going on between neighbors and for everyone's collective good.
Well, here's an idea I have just off the top of my head. What if there were small little groups in neighborhoods that you did some dilemmas, moral dilemmas, and you taught people how to talk to your neighbor. And you said, hey, I don't want this spreading to you, so this is what I'm going to do. There's ways to achieve things without going head on and fighting,
Excellent work.
Allison?
I would just add that our entire system is the complaint-based system. So I don't really think that there's anything different about this. The town generally doesn't have the resources to go out and really proactively enforce almost anything. And so I think it's a good reminder for everybody to, like, the things that the town responds to are generally complaint-based or tip-based. And so sometimes it ends up just being the people that are most likely to complain about their neighbors that end up complaining to the town. But really it is like, there are all these ordinances that are designed to protect the general good, and people should feel good about calling sometimes for, community oriented concerns. It's not just about ratting out your neighbor, but a lot of the time you can't get a hold of your neighbor, and because they're, it's a landscaping company that just comes in, or
Which is a
so
lot.
I don't think it's necessarily about like that complaining to the town or reporting a neighbor it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's
But if we could, there are a lot of people that want to join this little group that we have. I mean, if we could help people know how to talk to their neighbors. How do you talk to your neighbor? And you set up little sections of communities, and you have one person go and have a neighborhood meeting. This is just off the top of my head. I don't know. But I think that might be a progressive way to demolish any altercations between people and teach them how to talk to one another. Not teach them, but give them information so they can share it with one another. Now, maybe it's just a pie in the sky, but I don't think so.
no,
I think it could work.
Joanne, I have a question or something that I would want to run by you. I do support the slower approach, and I appreciate that you brought that up. The more educational approach is a way to get more broad support for this. But one thing that I would support potentially on the November ballot, and I want to see if you like this idea as well, is what you mentioned, which is asking the applicators to list the ingredients on the sign. I think that would be an initial step that would be in line with the educational goals that you have.
Well, I
What do you
mean, look
think?
at the food we eat. Don't they list the ingredients? Don't they list the ingredients? If you go down to Plants Unlimited and I want to buy a fungicide for aphids, don't they list the ingredients? But we're not recommending it to be on the November ballot. We
I
think
understand
that's
that,
too soon.
Even for just a list of ingredients for the applicators?
The Hallowell had a grace period before it got on the ballot. So they had a grace period where they just required the chemical companies to list the ingredients.
Yeah,
that's
And
what
would
you
the-
may be suggesting, that we would have that period.
I'm suggesting that maybe we just require the applicators to put it on,
You can.
Right.
That's
For
what Hallowell
even
did,
for
which I
Nov-
think is brilliant.
but I'm just saying even for November, just put
That would have-
that portion of it.
That's,
on the
That would have
ballot.
to go on the ballot. think
yeah, I
Hallowell
would
has-
support that. Why not?
But would
What
that
the
have,
heck?
would that have to go to the main pesticide control board
Probably.
to approve?
Maybe,
beforehand?
I don't know. We've been calling them and calling, emailing, and for some reason, they have not responded. So they're pretty slow, I think.
Audra and I can get you
Well,
in touch with
no,
that.
this is positive.
Go ahead, yeah.
So, it's very positive.
Yeah.
So Rebecca Jacobs, Chair of the Conservation Commission, she's also works for the Knox Lincoln Soil Water Conservation District, reached out to Gary Fish, who's a state horticulturalist, and he used to work for the Board of Pesticide Control, but now one of his many responsibilities is to help communities develop these sorts of ordinances. So he reached out directly and is available as a resource, and he'd be kind of like the person that you would work.
Yeah,
through
that would be
this.
terrific. The more insight, the more people that get involved, the better it is. It should not be a closed group. It should be an open group. Keep the doors open so that we learn. You can always make choices, but I think that's a great idea. Why not?
And Tom, when this came up initially, I did speak with Alex Peacock, who's now the director of the Board of Pesticide Control. So I have communicated in with him about this issue when you previously inquired. So I'll re-engage him on that to make sure we can get an answer on. I do think we'll have to go to the Pesticide Control Board for something. as little as identifying the products that are being used. So, but I'll get that working with him as well.
Yeah, Jeremy, that'd be great. I've spoken to Alex as well. But if
Sure.
you could reach out to him and ask him whether
Absolutely.
we would
Yeah.
need the Board of Pesticide Control's permission to have an ordinance where applicators would just have to list their ingredients. I see that as a very different thing than a pesticide ordinance.
Right.
It's not a pesticide ordinance.
No, it's not.
But
It's a requirement.
It's also.
But we at least ask him.
yeah,
let us know.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Easy.
It's also, there are so many other municipalities that have already gone through this, so the approved ordinances are on the books. So I'm assuming that, and some of them require that very thing. So if it's already something that's been vetted by the Board of Pesticide Control, they've already, I don't see that they're going to say, well, this was okay for Hollowell, but for Camden, you can't have that. I think it's mostly going to be a boilerplate thing where there's language that's already been approved.
It's best to find out.
What's that?
It's best
Oh,
to find out.
absolutely. I'm just
And I can
saying-
call
Yeah.
Hallowell and ask them, but I think Jeremy's correct. Go to them and dot your I's, cross your T's. There's nothing to lose.
Any other questions or comments for Joanne? Joanne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a
Thank you for
great
listening.
Opening.
This is new to me.
Right. Joanne Wilson for president. Put it in my yard. All right. Thank you. Well, nice quick agenda tonight. Our final item on our agenda tonight is adjournment. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. I'll take, all those in favor? 5-0. Thank you, everyone.